So I was being held up by a massive creature. At least I think it was massive, because it didn't seem to have any issues holding me up. Anyway, I didn't know what creature it was because my eyes were glued closed by my own blood. My head never hurt as much as it did then. That weird voice called out something, and then... This is Nadec, my adventure, written down in a better way than I can tell it. Chapter 6. Blackie. The abandoned house looked more like a shack than the rich mansion it used to be. Nadec was at the edge of the walled domain, where the gate had long since rusted out of its hinges. She blinked. Wood creaked underneath her boots as she walked in through the servants' entrance. The steady beating of her heart sounded loud and faster than usually. She blinked. Voices stopped when she barged into her room, halberd ready. She didn't want to use it. In the empty fireplace sat a bound figure on a chair. She blinked. A man held his hands up in surrender as she stood before him. A coward. She liked that. The other person backed away from Nadec towards the fireplace. No matter what, keep your subject safe. The most important instruction. She blinked. Hesitation froze her halberd in mid-air. The fear in her opponent's face chilled the air between them. Despite the woman's terror, she swung her knife towards the captive. I can't do it. I can't do it. Nadec still mumbled while the nightmare was fading. It had been a while since she'd had one. She thought them gone for good. The specific one was already vague, but she knew well enough what it had been. Her first retrieval mission after being recruited by her employers. Nadec's throbbing temple sped up the process into the waking world. Soon the last traces of the dream and the memories disappeared. She stirred, trying to sit up. She couldn't. Her hands and feet were bound together behind her back. I'm glad I started doing yoga last year, she thought as she considered her awkward position. Though it will still hurt when I get free. She could feel her limbs cramping up already. Opening her eyes was more difficult than it should have been. Something sticky prevented them from doing so. Blood. Of course. Stupid whoever did this, or whatever did this, remembering what had happened. Something Whiny had said, triggering her enough to walk away. His words were lost to her now, knocked out by that massive blackness. The ones who hit people on the head to knock them out never seemed to realize how dangerous it was. It was all good in movies and the like, but in real life a head injury is more likely to cause death instead of only unconsciousness. Although this time she got lucky, she was still alive. Hopefully no nausea assaulted her. In a burst of panic, she lifted her head, as much as she could, which wasn't much, and moved it to the side before violently throwing up. Her nose and throat stung from the vomit's acidity. She blew the stuff out of her nose as well as she could before shuffling backwards, away from the reeking spot. She cursed inwardly at the near certainty of having a concussion. That wasn't the most important issue, though. Where was she, and why was she bound? She grunted. Those should have been the first things I questioned. Something's wrong with my head, all right? Despite the pain, she lifted her head and tried to move into a sitting position.
Let me help you with that, love.
An amused, gravelly, and inhumanely deep voice growled. Her heart jumped in her throat while she was lifted by the waist. Her body protested. The way she was tied up did not make it a pleasant experience. Thank you, gravity. At least this realm had less of a downward pull than Earth. It was fun to use it to her advantage while fighting. A powerful jump could take her places. Her mind drifted, daydreaming about jumping up and staying in the air, flying, soaring above the trees.
Here, boy,
the voice called out, pulling her back to the present with difficulties. Nadec's half-open eyes were too blurry to see more than vague blots of grouped colors. Purple, pink, orange, black, green. A wet rag slapped in her face. It moved upwards. It wasn't smooth. Not like what a rag should be. In fact, it felt like a tongue. It was a tongue. A massive tongue. So much larger than Kitty's, but with the same coarseness. Kitty! All worries about being licked by a creature with a tongue larger than her head evaporated to a growing concern for her feline body. He'd been on her shoulders when she lost consciousness. Nadec hoped with a passion that he'd managed to escape. All of a sudden, she also remembered her other travel partner. Whiny. Did he know she was captured? Was Kitty with him? Was he going to try and free her? A daydream of a nude prince on a white horse galloping towards her filled her vision. No, he wasn't on a white horse. He was running, naked. That certainly changed the fairy tale feel of the daydream.
Oi, princess.
Large, purple-haired fingers snapped in front of her eyes. She blinked several times in a row. Daydreaming about a prince, no, a king, saving her? Her head must really be bad. Most of the dried blood was gone from her face, licked off with the spew. Her sight had improved visibly. She snorted at that pun, and immediately regretted it. Snorting after a puking session, and with a split head, was not a good idea. Working hard to focus her eyes, she looked at what was holding her. The orange hairs only covered the back of the hands and fingers, but further up the arm and body it grew pretty much everywhere. Almost like an extremely hairy man, except twice as large and proportionally wide, and deep purple, a gorgeous, saturated color. Too bad everything else about the creature was hideous. She wasn't sure what it was, even though she should know all of the creatures from the other realm. Her first thought was a glurp, but even her adult brain knew the colors were in reverse. She groaned at seeing that this one had no covering strip of cloth. Franking great. Princess? Slurp? She didn't realize she'd spoken, muttered, out loud until the harumph of the creature exploded in her head. It must have seen her wince because, to her large surprise, it apologized for the sound, though she doubted it was sincere.
So sorry, princess. Blackie gets too wild sometime. She didn't mean to knock you over. She didn't mean to headbutt you so hard.
Blackie? The creature let one hand go from her waist, holding her up as easily with one as with two, and turned her head to the side. A dragon. There was a dragon. After all she'd seen in this realm in the past years, she shouldn't be surprised. Yet she was. None of the creatures here matched up with any of the myths and legends of Earth. None. There weren't any orcs, nor trolls, nor unicorns, nor mermen, No elves, nor dwarves, none of that. Yet, there it was. It was real. Dragons were real. The blackness of the scales sucked in the light. The darkness it caused made the vibrantly colored eyes appear to glow. It wasn't as large as she'd expected a dragon to be, but she still felt her eyes open wide. Did he eat my cat? You have been listening to Nadec, Chapter 6, Blackie, narrated by myself, Nadec, adventured by and lived through by Nadec, written in a better way than I can tell it, by Astrid, Jeff. Don't go just yet. We've got bloopers coming up. Before we get to those, we just want to say that if you head over to astridjeff.com, you can find transcripts and full chapters of this podcast. Even more, you can find the unedited draft of Nadec at least up to 15 chapters further than the podcast goes. So, if you're keen to know how the story continues, you have the option to go and read. Find us on Twitter at AstridJeff and at Nadec and Kitty. If you like this show and would like to support it, a good way to do that is share it around to everyone you know. An even better way is to rate and review it on iTunes or whichever podcatcher you use. Don't forget to follow the show or subscribe for free. Nadec Throbbing spent... Whoopsie. Nadec Throbbing spent... This is difficult. Nadec's throbbing throbbing temple. Her nose and throat stung from the vomits. Her nose and throat stung from a boo.
Let me help you with that, love.
An amused, gravelly, and inhumanely deep voice growled.
Let's do this again.
An amused, gravelly, and inhumanely, and he'd been on her shoulders. Shoo. Nadec hoped with a passion that he'd managed to escape easily with one as with two, with holding her up as. Did he eat my cat? 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 Did he eat my cat?